Oh, baby, Justin, welcome back. It's been not as long as it was between our prior two episodes, but here we are back for episode 10. We hit double digits. Mama, we made it.
Let's
We
go.
made it. If you made it through our first
Are
10
we almost a
episodes,
tween then?
are we almost a tween? I don't want to think about that.
Yeah. What's considered a tween?
I guess prior to teenage years, I don't know. Um, well, if you made it to this
Oh man,
podcast
let's go.
teenage years with us, thank you for listening. We appreciate you guys tuning in to hear what we have to say.
Shout out to all those people that spent 10 whole chunks of time. I was going to say hours, but it's more than that because they're all like an hour and a half long. Shout out to everyone that spent 10 whole periods of time listening to us just ramble on and ramble on. You guys, respect. We appreciate you.
We do appreciate you. We know who you are. There's like five of you.
Yeah.
So
Not that hard to keep
uh,
track of.
exactly, yeah, not too hard to
Uh,
weed out who is and isn't. But
yeah.
hey, we're back to talk about episode 3 of Loki, Lamentis. This episode, a little bit shorter than the first two in Loki, as well as honestly, not a ton happened to progress the plot forwards. This episode gave us a lot of character moments with Loki and his female variant. As we learn, her name is Sylvie, or she is a Loki variant, but goes by Sylvie. She mentions that she no longer goes by that name, and Loki refers to her as a Loki, and she says, "Don't call me that." So Loki and Sylvie get a lot of good one-on-one moments where they're trying to kind of figure the other out as versions of the same person. They're tricksters and trying to get inside the other's mind. And so that lends to a lot of good dialogue scenes where they're trying to learn about the other. But not too much actually happens that move the story of this Loki variant or I guess these Loki variants and the TVA forward. We start this episode with Loki and Sylvie escaping to the TVA from the Superstore last episode. A time door that they opened up goes right to the TVA where everybody has cleared out to deal with the massive time bomb that Sylvie set off last episode. Her plan was to cause this big distraction apparently and get access to the TVA and we assume by extension the timekeepers, but we also don't get too much more information on her plan in this episode. Description of the episode on Disney Plus said the Loki variant's plan is like revealed. And I saw that and I was excited because I was like, oh, great. I can't wait to see what's up her sleeve and what her scheme is here. And then we actually don't learn too much about the plan. She says that it was years in the making. She's upset at Loki for ruining it. But we actually don't learn what her endgame is. So a little bit of a liar there from Disney Plus on the episode description.
Yeah. I was thinking about it as I was watching, and my thought was, I thought based on the last episode that her end game, right, that her goal was this bomb that set off all of these branches in the multiverse. I thought she was trying to cause chaos and whatever, but it seems as if maybe that was just a distraction. I don't know if maybe she had a change in plans just because the TVA and Loki showed up where she was. Maybe she wasn't expecting them to be there and so had to kind of redirect her plan a little bit. But I was not expecting them to go straight to the TVA. I thought she was dipping out to escape after setting off the bomb. We'll just call it a bomb. It's not really a bomb, but dropping all of the variants or whatever the heck they're called, making all the splits
The reset
in the
charges.
timeline. The reset charges, yeah. I thought that she had set that off and tried to just escape because that was her end game, but it seems like that was not the case. It was just a way to get to the timekeepers, and I guess we heard that last time because there was the agent with the TVA who she had kidnapped that let everyone know that she told them where the timekeepers are, which I don't know how just a regular agent knows where they are because it seems as if even Mobius has never had access to them and he seemed at a higher rank than her, but I guess it's assumed people have a general idea of where the timekeepers are even if they don't get to go in and see them. But yeah, we see Sylvie just go right to the TVA and we see Loki chase after her just like we saw on the other side in the last episode. And they fight their way a little bit through some guards and everything, but eventually end up not really succeeding in whatever the heck she's trying to do. They're kind of fighting each other at the same time as fighting everyone else and end up just teleporting themselves to this random location, which we end up learning is Lamentis, which is the place that the whole rest of the episode takes place. So the amount of time spent in the TVA is actually relatively brief. And then they're on this moon or planet. Was it the moon? And the planet was about to crash into the moon? Is that what it was?
Yeah, I believe Lamentis 1 is the moon that they end up on, which is about to collide with its planet. Before we get there, we also have a flashback scene of Sylvie interrogating C20, the captain that was kind of kidnapped last episode. And it seems that she brought her back to a place in her own memory. C20 kind of got the sense that she was dreaming, and she was like, this isn't real. She was like, I remember this, and I don't remember you. So the reality kind of breaks for her. But we learn that Sylvie has the ability to kind of enchant people by creating a false reality out of their memories, which I thought was really interesting and seemed to be quite an effective technique because she ended up getting what she needed out of C20. So we'll see what happens with the enchanting ability in the future. There may be some more of it going on this episode, according to some theorizing, but we're not 100% sure on that yet.
Yeah, we saw a bit of that last episode, at least with her controlling the people's bodies. But this gives a little bit more insight into it with being able to get inside their minds rather than just puppeteer them around. So it seems like she's got a lot of really cool abilities, which I don't know if we've seen Loki use any of these, because he's done mind control before, but that required the use of the Mind Stone in Avengers when he was doing that. And, when he taps his scepter on Iron Man's chest and it doesn't work because it's on the arc reactor, right? He's not able to do anything else about it. So they very clearly have a bit of different abilities, which is interesting. And I think a bit cooler than having them just have the exact same abilities and powers and then just have two of them. But yeah, no, really interesting stuff. And it's awesome we're getting to see a bit more of what she can do, because we literally just met her like the end of last episode.
Yeah, so as they are teleported to Lamentis 1, this moon that's about to get crashed into by a planet, they crash land on this, I guess, just junk pile, essentially, in the middle of nowhere, and realize that their temp pad, which is the little device that the TVA and Sylvia has one as well, the little device that lets them open doors and travel through time and space, theirs is low on battery, apparently. They can travel through time and space interdimensionally, but still need those double A's to charge up.
They should have just brought a TV remote, just take them out of there and stick them in.
Exactly. Nobody on the planet had any spare double or triple A's, apparently. So they're set off to find a power source to charge it, and Sylvie says that it's going to take a big power source. There's a funny scene where Loki offers up like a neon sign as a power source, and she just gives him a ton of crap for it. Like, dude, come on. This is an interdimensional portal gun, basically. And you think it's going to work off of a little neon sign electricity? Come on, give me a break. So they set off across this slowly being destroyed moon to... Well, not really slowly. It's imminent disaster is at hand, but they have some time. They set off to look for a power source. They have to take this train to, I think it was called the Ark, is basically this big ship that was there to rescue the inhabitants of said moon. Gave me big 2012 vibes. If any of you guys out there remember or have seen the movie 2012, spoilers for almost a decade-old movie. Actually, it probably is a decade old. It definitely didn't come out in 2012, so...
Well, yeah, because people thought the world was going to end.
Right,
so
exactly.
It didn't come out after that.
Yeah, when they're all in China trying to get on that massive, I think they call it the Ark there as well, those massive ships that are for the inhabitants of the Earth to survive all of global warming's disasters.
The rich inhabitants.
Yes, and that's sort of the same thing here as well. We see kind of the wealthy inhabitants on the train on the way to the Ark, and meanwhile outside there's a huge line of poor people, and I guess it just makes a statement that no matter where in the galaxy or where in Marvel's 9 realms or anywhere in time and space, there's always going to be a class divide between rich and poor. Marvel just making poignant political statements.
As if the currency of that moon is going to matter at all when there's 20 total people left alive because it gets destroyed and they have to move to a different planet.
20 seems generous for the people to survive a planet crashing into its own moon. But
oh my goodness.
Yeah, we get a really kind of goofy scene where Loki does a little bit of transformation. He shapeshifts into like a guard's outfit and sneaks them on board. I was a little bit thrown off here because he was very bad at bluffing his way onto this train. Like, they almost get caught, except for Were it not for Sylvie's enchantment of the guard that was about to turn them in. Puts a little thought towards a theory that I'll explain a little bit closer towards the end of the episode. But Loki fails here to trick his way onto this train. But they do get on eventually. And this is where the nice character stuff starts. They sit down and they have kind of an in-depth conversation about each other. And, because they're variants of the same person, or so we believe, they're trying to learn how their experiences are the same and how they're different. Loki reveals that his parents never told him that he was adopted until he figured it out for himself later. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Is that a spoiler for you? Like, did you not know that you were adopted? And Sylvie actually does know. She's like, yeah, they told me actually at a very early age that I was. And this kind of doesn't make sense with what she says next, because she asked Loki about her mother, about his mother, and he, interestingly, because this is again not the Loki that has gone through the movies of character development that we've seen in Ragnarok and Dark World and Infinity War, but only saw those events unfold, in about 10 minutes in the TVA theater. He does still know what happens. Like, he knows Mobius showed him his mom dying. And so he still clearly is affected very heavily by that, despite not being the same Loki that we see later. So we know that even at his most evil state here, in Avengers, Loki was still kind of a mama's boy. Like, he still had a great deal of love and respect for his mom, even when he was a clear villain instead of a great hero.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to blame most of his issues throughout his childhood and into his life on Odin, taking him from the Frost Giants and raising him and not telling him what he was, and always favoring Thor. And so, I think all of the issues that he has had mostly stem from his relationship with Odin. So it's not really a surprise to me that even well before he knows his mother's fate, he still is, very much, like you said, a mama's boy. But doesn't she say that she doesn't really know her mother because she left while she was still young? She being Sylvie.
Well, that's the part that didn't make sense to me with what she says about knowing that she's adopted, because she then says that she barely remembers her mother. She has brief moments of memories that she has, but she can't remember anything concrete, which comes as a real contrast after Loki describes his own mother in such glowing praise. But it's interesting that she would say that right after saying that they told me that I was adopted. So she clearly remembers that her mother and father told her that she was adopted, but then doesn't remember her mother at all. Seems like she's not being 100% straightforward. And this just lends more questions here.
Maybe there's just something with time traveling so much that messes with your brain and your memory.
That's entirely possible. It also begs the question, at what point do variants become pruned by the TVA? If this version of Loki was just born female, is that not different from the original timeline, the sacred timeline Loki? Wouldn't that be a deviation from what's supposed to happen? You think that she would have been reset or pruned a long time ago if that were the case, and you figure everything in her life that she's done has been different from what the sacred timeline Loki would have done. So seems like she's been on the run for a long time.
Yeah, basically at birth, right? If him being male is the sacred timeline, which we don't even know if the sacred timeline is a thing because it's been all unreliable sources that have been telling us about it. But if that is the case, yeah, I mean, you're right. Literally, the second she was born, not as a male Loki, she would have been pruned, which is, how on earth does she exist? How does she survive something like that? Maybe there's help, I think the most likely explanation is that the sacred timeline is kind of not a real thing, but I guess we'll find out at some point here.
Yeah, again, this episode, while also not doing too much to advance the plot, brings up a lot more questions than it actually answers. They kind of interrogate each other here for a little bit, but at the end I was feeling more confused about the two of them than I was going into it, which is probably, on purpose given the trickster nature of the characters that we're dealing with here. But again, a lot of mysterious stuff going on here that we just don't know the answer to at this point. One thing that we do get the answer to, which is a huge reveal during this time on Lamentis 1, is that all the people in the TVA are not created by the Timekeepers. They are actually variants that are taken from other timelines and just enslaved as just grunt workers at the TVA. This would explain why, C20 had memories of a previous life where she liked drinking margaritas. This would explain why Mobius has a love of jet skis that would be completely unfounded if he were just created in the TVA. And this is huge for, the series. At this point, if you didn't think there was something nefarious going on with the TVA, probably weren't watching. But this definitely confirms that everything is not as it seems. There's some shady stuff going on behind the scenes, and the TVA is probably the real antagonist, or the person behind the TVA is the real antagonist of this show, and not either of the Loki variants.
Definitely the biggest reveal of the episode, and really the thing that I think is going to affect the plot the most going on, because all the rest of it was, like you said, mostly just character development and kind of putzing around. I mean, the plot really hasn't even advanced because they're still stuck on the planet, the same planet that they landed on, 5 minutes into the episode. And so, from a plot perspective, the biggest reveal is what you just said, the fact that the TVA employees are all variants themselves, apparently with no memory of being variants. And so, yeah, that's the thing that I think is going to have the biggest effect going forward, is really interesting and just raises a lot of questions, which we already had questions. It's not like we totally thought everything was fine, and then now, oh no, what's going on? There's been questions the whole time, but this gives us a little bit more direction and makes it a little bit more clear that the TVA is not who they say they are. I'm really wondering if Sylvie's going to end up being like, a misunderstood good guy who we thought was a bad guy the whole time, but it turns out was like a freedom fighter, good guy, a la the Skrulls and
the Flag Smashers.
The way they tried to do the Flag Smashers and totally failed.
Yeah, botched it. Yep.
I'm imagining that's kind of what is going to end up happening, which I think will probably be a little bit irksome to me just because it's a little bit predictable, and I don't totally love that as a plot line and as a theme, but I might be totally off on that, and if they can do it in a way that's good, if they do end up doing that, I'll accept it, but I'm kind of expecting that to be the case, especially as she's already becoming much more sympathetic and is already kind of buddy-buddy with Loki, who I still don't know if we're supposed to be rooting for Loki or against him at this point. I think everyone roots for him just because of how charismatic Tom Hiddleston is, and because we all remember, the Infinity War Loki and kind of project him onto this Loki. But I still don't know if we're supposed to be rooting for him or not. And so that makes it hard for me to know if we're supposed to be rooting for her as well. But I definitely am rooting for him at least. Whether we're supposed to or not, I mean, I don't know if anyone's watching that isn't, but I don't know if we're necessarily supposed to. We were supposed to root for the Flag Smashers, and I absolutely 1,000% was not ever going to. So,
Well, yeah, if the title of the show were the Flag Smashers, I'm sure they would have been, more charismatic, and we would have got a better focus of them. So for us to like the main character of the show is not exactly a surprise. But yeah, this is a big conversation here for obviously the future of this show and the future of the MCU. Depending on who's behind the Timekeepers and the TVA, this could have major implications going forward. And fingers crossed that Kang is involved. I don't want to get my hopes up too high after the Mephisto debacle that was in WandaVision, but I have high hopes for Kang.
I hope it's Kang so bad.
If they don't show him, that'd be fine. I don't want this necessarily to reveal a major villain for Phase 4 in like a TV show. I can see them not doing that, but at least have a name drop or some teaser to let us know that he is behind the scenes.
Remake the exact same shot from the end of the Avengers when Thanos just turns and smiles. Just remake that exact same thing except with Kang. Bro, if he's here, I'm going to be so hyped, and all of my criticisms of this show will go away. Unless they defeat him in one episode, then I'll just stop watching the MCU.
Oh, I will be so upset. They can't, though, because Kang is already confirmed for Ant-Man 3, so...
I'm not going to get my hopes up too much, but that would be my ideal scenario.
Yeah.
Oh, they're already way too high, yeah. If Ramatut comes out, man, if he comes out looking Egyptian and everything, which that's one of the versions of Kang, essentially, man, that would be crazy. But we won't speculate hard enough to break our hearts if it doesn't happen. But there's clearly something beyond the TVA, or behind the TVA, that is nefarious, suspicious, sneaky. Yeah, and we'll have to tune in to see what it is. I think realistically that's the thing that's just the biggest takeaway from this episode. I think the rest of the episode, from my perspective, was a little bit boring. I don't know. When Loki was talking with Sylvie about love and things like that, I'm like, I don't really care about any of this. there were some cool fight scenes in the middle, and at the end was pretty hectic once they were trying to get on the ark and then everything was collapsing around them. It kind of reminded me of on Titan when Thanos threw the moon at everyone up there during the fight. That scene kind of reminded me of that. And I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but as there's this big reveal, and then the train eventually continues on, and then there's a fight scene because the guards realize that Loki and Sylvie don't have their tickets, a la Polar Express. They did not climb on top and meet the hobo. Instead, they just get yeeted out the window.
The Tom Hanks hobo suddenly appears in the MCU. That'd be unbelievable.
Tossed out the window, or Loki gets tossed out the window, and Sylvie jumps out after him because he still has the little remote control thing in his pocket. And I don't know what it is, man. Loki just keeps getting beat up. Like, he can't take on anybody. Like what you had said earlier, it was surprising that he failed miserably in sneaking them on. Like, he didn't even disguise his face or anything. He only put on a disguise, which, Loki's evil and he's a bit on the silly and mischievous side, but he's not dumb and he's not incapable, right? Those are things that he's very much not, but he couldn't sneak on and he keeps losing all these fights. I don't know if there's some explanation for that or if it's just to make Sylvie look tougher than him or what, but I'm like, man, this dude is, which I guess he was drunk in this scene as well.
He was full, which is actually
he was
Norwegian
full.
for drunk, which is hilarious.
But it's like, man, this dude cannot hold his own. Like, I don't know what it is. He's supposed to be...
Well, that's
like
what I think happened here in this part. Loki takes
deal?
several punches from these guards on the train in Lamentis, which, from what I've read about Lamentis, it is on the edge of Kree space. So it's not like they're just normal people out here. Okay, the Kree are obviously a strong race, but Loki was taking punches like it was no big deal and only got taken by surprise when they used his own weight against him to kind of throw him out the window, which they would be physically capable of, and with the element of surprise if he wasn't ready or not as sharp as he could be because he was hammered, could definitely be possible. But yeah, Loki has been getting his butt handed to him a ton. And I think the main reason is so he can land on his face and then do a dramatic hair flip as he gets up. There were probably 4 or 5 dramatic hair flips this episode, and it's a signature move for Loki at this point. Get thrown to the ground, toss your hair back, and throw out a witty quip. And that's a Loki right there.
Remember back in Thor 1 when he had short hair? It wasn't a buzz cut, but he had short hair, man.
Yeah, that's probably why he was so angsty, is because he wanted to flip his hair, but then just look goofy tossing his head around with no locks.
It's just so iconic now, having the long hair. He could be in like a L'Oreal commercial every time he does that. I'm just imagining slow-mo, just like the... whoosh. You can't see me on this recording, but I'm flipping my hair back.
Head and shoulders.
Almost as majestically, with my 3-yard hair.
Yeah, I bet there will be a supercut after this season of all the times Loki has flipped his hair back, and it will be probably 30 minutes long. But yeah, so he gets thrown off the train by the guards and lands on the tent pad, apparently, as he's thrown out. So not only did they need to charge it, but now it's broken. They have no way to get off this moon that's about to get crushed by a planet, which also they're not going to be rescued from because the TVA will not detect any variance energy in this apocalypse. So they decide they need to create some variance energy by saving all the people that would normally be dying on this ark because it doesn't make it off the planet. So their next plan is to go hijack the ark and save all the people on it. And this is where the coolest shot in the entire season has come. This is probably the best shot in any of the Marvel shows by far. And there's this incredible one take of them running through this downtown. It's all lit up with different neon, as downtowns are, and there's just destruction everywhere, chaos as bits of building fall and parts of planet come flying out of the sky, and the camera just follows Loki and Sylvie as they traverse this treacherous area. Things go wrong and blow up right in front of them, and they have to move. It reminded me a lot of 1917. Was actually the most recent movie I had watched that had a really good long take in it. That movie is great. Obviously, there are some hidden cuts because you can't do an hour 40 movie in literally one take. But
Birdman. This
was an excellent visual to end the episode. And it unfortunately does end the episode because that's where it ends. They make their way to the ark and the top of it blows up, and it seems like they're going to be stranded on Lamentis as plans go horribly wrong. So it felt like this episode was very short. Again, not really anything to drive the plot forward. they're still on the run from the TVA. We don't know what the TVA was doing to deal with the stuff that happened at the end of last episode. We know a little bit more about Loki and Sylvie, but not a ton, and we don't know her plan. So this episode seemed like a little bit of a filler, albeit some excellent dialogue, some wonderful scenes, and an amazing action sequence to end it. Again, not saying that I thought this was a bad episode, but definitely seemed like a filler episode, which is strange to me in a season that's only 6 episodes that you would have time for an episode like that. So again, I really enjoyed watching this episode, but I just don't, maybe something will be revealed later that makes this a vital episode for us to have. But without another big reveal, it seems like they're just going to deal with this week's reveal on next week's episode. So why even reveal it this week if it's not going to be a big cliffhanger or something at the very end? Like, why reveal that mid-episode to not deal with it and then actually also not push the plot further? I'm oversimplifying. Obviously, things did happen, but compared to the first 2 episodes where, kind of had my mind blown multiple times in those first 2 episodes. Yeah, not much to talk on this episode, which, we've only been chatting about this for about 30 minutes and we're already wrapping up the plot here.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the end. The end was exciting and dramatic, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of, this is going to make you sad, Steve, but The Bells. You know what I'm talking about? Game of Thrones.
Don't even say nothing to me, boy.
Yeah, so this is spoilers for the
Don't
Game of
even
Thrones
say
season.
nothing to me about
But
The Bells. Oh my god.
There's this...
If you have ever wanted to experience rage like hell hath no, watch all of Game of Thrones, one of the best shows ever made, and then watch the 8th season, and you will want to have crows come pick your eyeballs out. It is...
Steve, we got to set a spoiler warning for your roommates, because I know you guys are watching through it, but...
I'm not going to discuss... No, well, they don't listen anyways. They hear me talking about this through the walls of our apartment.
Yo, man, your roommates gotta listen. You need better roommates.
Yeah, well, they subscribe, but they just haven't listened. They get the unedited version every week when we record.
That's fair. As long as they just leave it playing in the background on mute, pump the strings up.
Yeah, we got to get those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers.
I understood that reference.
Regardless, reminded me of this scene where I won't go into detail and spoil it for people that are watching, but essentially buildings are collapsing around this character, and it's kind of a one-shot take, and it's like, oh, they almost died, oh, they're alive. Oh, they almost died, oh, they're alive. Oh, they almost died, this kind of a deal. But it's exciting to watch still, and I think it was much better done than the one in Game of Thrones, where it's a kind of a similar scene. I think it was really well done, and it was tense, and I was like, oh, man, I thought they were going to get on, and then... have to deal with it, and nope, just got hit by this giant meteor, this giant chunk of the planet that just destroys the Ark. And I'm like, oh man, this has kind of been the thing that they've been going after, first for the power source and secondly for the ride, the entire episode, and it's gone. And yeah, the episode just went by really quickly, and I think it definitely sped up at the end, but also was just a relatively short episode. It was around 8 to 10 minutes shorter than both of the first 2, and when it finished, I was watching it with my 2 housemates here, and we all kind of had the same reaction. We're like, wait, that's it? Like, it's over? We were expecting there to be a bit more resolution to it, which cliffhangers are great. In a TV show, they're great. They work way better in a TV show than in a movie where it's, instantly resolved the next scene because we have to wait the whole week in between. So cliffhangers are great. I love that it ended on a cliffhanger. But the whole episode seemed to just be kind of missing something, and was not a bad episode by any stretch. And I think that a rewatch will do wonders for me, because I do agree that there was a lot of good stuff in there. I just think after my expectations from the first 2, and the fact that it was just short as an episode, just time-wise, kind of left me wanting a bit more, and it didn't really move the plot forward at all. So I think it's something that once we have the whole scope of the show, will be really great to go back and watch once we see how it ends up. But especially after this one, I definitely enjoyed the first 2 episodes more than this one, as much as there were some great moments within this episode. And I think the biggest takeaway is, A, what we had said before, the fact that all the employees of the TVA are variants, and the other thing is just wondering how the heck they're going to get off this moon now. And just speculation on how are they going to get off? Or do they get off? Maybe they don't. And then it brings us back to another time loop where we see other versions of them as variants experiencing the same thing, but something different happens. That's totally a possibility as well, because if there's infinite time and infinite possibilities, it's possible that another Loki comes and saves them, or another Loki, just we follow him or something. But I don't imagine that would be the case. I imagine we're going to continue following these two. But what do you think is going to happen? How do you think they're going to get off it? Or do you think they're going to?
I think they're going to be saved by a Loki opening a portal right next to them and taking them to the Citadel of Lokis at the center of the galactic
You're not
empire.
Pulling that from anything,
That's
are
my
you?
prediction. That's 100% all head-created fantasy right there. I did not take inspiration from anybody. Zero plagiarism involved.
Definitely not Rick and Morty.
Come on, Justin. He's Mr.
Council
Nimbus.
Bricks.
He controls the police.
Yo, Rick and Morty's back, baby.
Rick
Let's
and Morty
go.
is
Episode
back.
1 of season 5 was last Sunday. Yo, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
It's so
It's
good.
been great.
Every Sunday. We gotta start doing 2 episodes a week, man. One for Rick and Morty and one for this. Rick and Morty could be like a 10-minute episode.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. If you guys want to hear us talk about other stuff throughout the week in little bite-sized chunks instead of our typical, 40 to an hour plus pod when we talk about these longer shows in a bit more depth, we can definitely do that. Whatever the people want to hear. Just kidding. It's not. It's actually whatever we want to talk about. So we'll talk about Rick and Morty if we want, and you guys can just listen. And if you don't want to listen, you don't have to. But we're going to talk about what we want to talk about.
Yeah, let us know.
So
let us know if
debate
you
it.
want smaller 10-minute episodes.
We'll think about it. We'll do it if we want. But no promises. No comment. But yes.
Well, we'll think about that.
But yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, leaving us with more questions than answers. In terms of the story from last week, I mean, we're still wondering what Lady Loki's scheme is. We're wondering how the heck they're going to resolve this with the TVA, how they're going to team up. We don't know if they're actually working on the same team together to take down the TVA, or if one of them is bad or worse or better than the other. We didn't get hardly any time with the TVA this week, so we don't know what Mobius has been up to. And now we're just wondering how they're going to get out of the situation, which is the same thing that ended up last week. And we don't know what the TVA is doing with the time bombs that went off either. So
Yeah, it didn't go into that at all. We have no clue what happened in all the other branches that happened. So I'm curious to see what the heck happens with those.
I guess we will see. But that's where this episode leaves us. So short one this week. It's going to be an easy editing job for whichever lucky person gets to do that. But yeah, another good episode. Not quite as engaging as the first two, but I do have to say, visually this episode was stunning. And I hope we get more of these other planetary visuals that just look outstanding even on a small screen. So
Oh, absolutely. The production value on these episodes, just for all these shows, is remarkable. And that's something that I don't feel the need to bring up every single week, because at this point I think it's pretty expected and regular. But it's good for you to bring that up, because it really is remarkable. And it's movie quality. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So I imagine that will continue to be the case for the rest of the show and for all of the other MCU Disney Plus shows. Have realized that I've started to take it for granted, and I don't want to, because it really is incredible what they've been able to do. So
yeah, watching some older Marvel properties or stuff that's not explicitly connected to the MCU, you can see that Marvel Disney money makes a big difference. And yeah, can't really take it for granted, and when we have such high quality stuff coming out, so gotta appreciate every episode. I'm looking forward to next week very much, seeing all these questions hopefully get answered, at least some of them, and learning more about the TVA, the truth behind them, and the shenanigans the Lokis are gonna find themselves up to next week. So we'll tune in then.
we need Owen Wilson back, Lightning McQueen back on the screens, baby.
Ka-chow. We do.
All right, well, we will catch you all next week for episode 11. And yeah, have a great week, everybody. Don't get too crazy out there.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys. Well, actually, we'll talk to each other, but you guys can hear us talk to each other next week.
Deuces.